So, I hope you enjoyed your lunch. My name's Faye Benson. I work with Cornell Cooperative Extension out of Portland County, and I'm also on the New York State Grazing Land Coalition. And we've got a trailer that's packed with soil health demonstration equipment. The trailer didn't come with me today, but I brought this movable equipment that I have that does a pretty good job, but you may want to keep close and stay close to it so you can see what we're talking about. So soil health is a big thing these days, and it's great that they're finally talking a lot about soil health because they thought they had it figured out with fertilizer. You know, why we just use the soil to hold the plants up and then we feed it with fertilizer. And that really worked pretty well since World War II. But they're beginning to see weaknesses in that, and there's a lot of talk now about how to, relearn about soil health. And so that's what this talk is today, about, using plants and the organic matter to get that carbon back underground where it belongs and, improve the soil health. So let me start with, if you're a farmer and you're getting your soil tested, you usually send it out and it's being tested for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's how I was brought up, and that's the chemical portion. But then there's the physical, and that's like compaction. Like, if you drive your manure spreaders over the land, it compacts the ground. You can see that impact. But then there's the biological, and the biological is the piece that they've really it's so small. It's just incredible how they, since you can hardly see it, why even pay any attention to it? But I think one of the things I find really interesting is that you take a piece of soil just this big. There's more soil organisms in this block of soil right here than there are people on the planet. It's just the population of organisms in soil is incredible, and it has an incredible amount of power. But it can also, if we're ignoring it and bypassing the biology that does the recycling of all the nutrients, and using fertilizers, we're kind of forgetting about the benefit of biology in the soil. So that's what we're going to start with. So first I want to help you you got to get your mind small enough, because if there's 4 billion life forms in that, they got to be pretty small. And so we're going to talk about where they live. And so in soil, this is like what we call an aggregate. An aggregate is sand, silt, clay, and organic matter. It's just kind of clumped together in the soil. And it has big pores in between the pieces because they're different sizes. There's little pores inside of it. And that's an aggregate crumb. So if we have good biology in there, and that's where they like to live because they need air, they need water, they need to get rid of carbon dioxide, they need fresh food coming in, just like we do, or the livestock on the pastures. So we're going to look at the two different managed soils and watch what happens to these aggregates when we put water on them. So I have two soils that are exactly the same here. It's a columnar silt loam. It's from the Cornell Research Lab. This one here is out where they do the research plots. They're tilling it every year. This one is right on the edge of it. Same soil, but it's had grass growing through it. So I'm going to put a small block of these, or a couple blocks of these, into each one of these gallon jugs of soil. The one that's tilled all the time is more like a rock. There it goes.
That's from compaction?
It's, we'll find that out. Because this one looks pretty weak. The one that's had the sod growing, it's got little roots in it, so it's kind of easy to break. It's fragile. This one the difference between them, if you're measuring something, is organic matter. And organic matter is directly related to carbon in the soil because it's broken down plants, pieces of biological life forms that are in the soil. All this carbon gets stored in the soil. So this is reduced because of tillage. It's been oxygenated away. It's been burned up. So this is 2% organic matter. This one is only slightly higher. It's around 5% organic matter. Now I want you to watch when I put these into the water. Again, this is the 2% organic matter, the 5% organic matter. And if you're looking at the top of this, you'd see bubbles coming right up, and that's those holes we talked about. All the carbon dioxide from biology is being forced out of there. But you can see what else is happening. These are two exact same soils, they're just managed differently.
Good example.
And so what's happening is with this one, as the water rushed into these larger pores, it pushed out the carbon dioxide from the biology, from their breathing. And then when the rain stops, the water drips through and drains out of those pores and draws in fresh oxygen to the soil. And then when it gets rain, it does it again. This one, you can see that it's greatly reduced in size. That soil collapsed, nothing was holding it together, and that's the difference. Those aggregates, if you don't have biology in your soil, you don't have the glomalin, the glue that holds soil together. The mycorrhizae, part of their feeding is they put sticky stuff on the soil. Part of the hyphenate, the little that extend the roots, that it holds the soil together, and it's for the benefit of the biology, because this gives them a steady home or a factory to work in. Where this one, it collapses, and it has to rebuild itself again once the water, it gets washed down to the floodplain or wherever.
Gulf of Mexico. Or Chesapeake Bay.
So this is, I think, when I was in college, they didn't talk about the symbiotic relationship that's under the ground, because we're all familiar with photosynthesis. The green leaves, they're converting the sun, they're taking carbon dioxide and they're knocking off a carbon, releasing the O2 back to us. Then they take water with hydrogen, H2O, so they take the hydrogen off and they convert the carbon and the hydrogen into sugars, C6H12s and different formations of it. But they now realize that the plant itself is only using about 40 to 50% of that for the plant's growth, but they're leaking out in the roots the other 40 to 60%. And I'm going to pass this around, but if you look at it, you'll see all these little round balls hanging on the roots. And those are macro aggregates, because as we said, the biology is pretty small, so they have micro aggregates, which you wouldn't even be able to see, but if you put them all together, they make these macro aggregates. And they're holding on to those root hairs because that's where they're getting their food. They can't get to the sun to get the energy. They rely on the plants. But then the plants are giving them the sugars, but they give back some of the biology, breaks down the minerals so a form that the plants can use. And I'm getting into now why it's important for pastures and why it's important for grass-fed products. Because that all these micronutrients, sure, you can put N, P, and K on, get humongous growth. But what about all those micronutrients that you need for your health that we don't even know about? That's where the biology is filling in all those holes and breaking that down. And so you got to keep good active biology in your soil. So why don't you just pass around and take a look at those little, I don't want to say the word dingleberries, but that's the first thing that people think of.
It is a technical term.
So we're talking about, in their pastures, and I think I'm going to bring this back. This has been a, interesting topic about soil, but I want to get back to pastures, and that, we see a lot of green grass out there, and we think they're all pastures, but we know as farmers, they perform differently. And so there's certain things that you can do to affect your soil health, which affects the pastures. Now I'm going to take two soils here. See, I had them, here they are. And these I took from the fields out here. I usually have a big difference in the soil. Is Eric here?
Eric Zim?
Yeah.
He got pulled away for a photo op or something, I don't know.
Well, what Eric, what I've heard is that the soil has all been replanted here.
Yes.
And so there wasn't a big difference in this soil. But what I did find, I found two soils. One is compacted, The one on my right was, I use a, can you reach in the truck and get a penetrometer? We have a special tool that we use for measuring compaction on soils. And this is a penetrometer, and it's simply, you press on the handles and then you read the gauge to see what kind of pressure that it pushes back onto the meter. And so what it's telling us is how well the plant roots can go into that soil. If they get something around 300 pounds per square inch, it can't go any further. So I went around the pastures and I found compacted pastures, and that was on the right, and then this one's on the left. And so I'm going to put the same amount of water in it, and I'm not sure if this is going to work the way I'd like it to. Thank you. But what's happening is, this one's not even going through the holes in my rainfall gauge. It must be, oh, it needs air to go in there. There it goes. So what we saw over here was the healthy soil that had a lot more carbon in it, remained strong, and let the water go through it. So now the rain has stopped, and they both have quite a bit of water standing on it. And I think we might have to talk a while here and let that do what it's going to do here. But it's what we expect to happen is the healthy soil allows the water to percolate through the soil. And what I'm mimicking here is if you want to plow this and then plant a corn or wheat or soybeans in it. So you're taking healthy soil that's not compacted, tilling it, and then hopefully that when it forms back together, that allows water to percolate through it. And we're starting to see a little bit of action. Usually we get a lot more, but there's 100 cc's there and maybe only 50 there, but it's not a big difference. But that's, again, because the soil has all been recently tilled and has a similar history. But I think the bigger the difference we're going to see is in the top 4 inches of the pasture. And what this demonstration is going to be is I did the same thing. I used the penetrometer to find the compacted area, which is on the left, and then the uncompacted area, which was on the right. So we're going to simulate some rainfall on that pasture like we had the other day. How much did they get up here? An inch, 2 inch? 2. That, let me get some water here. So we're going to give it a good rainfall. And then we're going to be talking about the same thing that we saw in the very first example, that if it's healthy soil, the water should run through it. And what happens if it's not healthy soil? And again, I'm having a little bit of trouble here with my... Yeah, this one's not working that good on me. Running off the side on it. But I think we're going to see the difference. Yeah, okay. It rained pretty heavy there, and that's we had runoff on both of them. I wish I had tried this a little before we'd done this before, because normally what we expect to see is less runoff over here where it's less compacted. We do see there's a difference in the soil color or the water color. This one had a lot more runoff with the soil, where this one had the clean water runoff because it was so heavy at once. And that's what we're going to measure how much we had that ran through it. So what we're interested in is having the water run through to the next layer of soil, because that's what recharges the aquifers and the stores water for the future use. So again, this was the uncompacted, and then this was the compacted soil. So the uncompacted had little over 1 gallon. Or sorry, 1 cup, excuse me. 250 cc's. Somebody retaining that? So this one had just about 150 cc's. And that's what we would expect, that if you have compacted soils, those aggregates get squished down, and so the water can't rush around them to get out. And so we have more runoff, and it's dirtier runoff. But then if it goes through the next layer, that's what we really want to see, is because that's what saves the water for future use. And I think that's all I'm going to get into right now. I'm going to go ahead with any questions on it. I mean, the takeaway on this is keep track of where your compaction is. I mean, you know, when you put animals on wet ground, that's the worst thing you can do. So mark that on your calendars. If you keep a register like they were showing in here, that Morgan was showing, you know, write down that on that pasture you put animals in there on a rainy day. So you know you're going to have some compaction. The ways to reduce it is to go to tall grass grazing for a period of time on that pasture to help reduce that amount of compaction. So these are just some of the things you got to be thinking about. I mean, I'm showing the concepts of healthy soil here, but it's up to you to figure out how it's going to fit on your farm. The other thing that I really find interesting is about the the recycling of the nutrients that's on your pastures. It's really important. We talked about the aggregates and that interaction between the roots and the soil here in the aggregates, that's that interchange of where the sugars coming from the plants and the micronutrients coming from the biology coming to the plants. That's a really key thing. So one of the other things I found interesting today when we cut them was the uncompacted area. And when I cut this out, we only took about 4 inches with those forms there, but the roots on this continued on down. I had to cut them off with a sharp edge. But the one, in fact, I could show them to you here. This one, there was hardly any roots at all. This is the compacted area. Versus this one, I've moved them all over now. This is the one that had roots coming down way down below. And that means that sugar is going way down below too. That means there's biology that way down below too. That means there's that interchange of sugar and nutrients going way on down below. But the compacted ground, their roots stopped just about here. I mean, I popped this out and it was a nice smooth core. And it's because with a penetrometer, it reached over 300 pounds per square inch, and those roots couldn't get any deeper than that. So, I think that's my takeaway message, is to keep track of what you're doing to your pastures, and sometimes you have to be rough on them, because that's just the nature. You got to have the cows on them all the time, but then keep track of that and adjust for it in later use. So we are finally getting the results here that I was hoping for. It just took it a long time. So this was the compacted soil. It was loosened up. I dug it up. Then I put them both into jugs here, gave them the equal amount of compaction. And then when we poured water on, this has all come through 350 cc's. And it's completely empty now. This one still has water in it. So it's still pooling, and so if that was on a hillside, what would that pooling be doing? Runoff. And that's what causes, it goes into your streams, it's taking the soil with it. And that's why it's so key to, if you do plow your soil, start with healthy soil. If we're seeing this too much now, it's just they keep tilling and tilling and tilling, and this organic matter is being reduced. Organic matter is the food for the biology. Once the biology is reduced, then you change from this to this. And that's the takeaway from this talk. Any questions?
Eric's going to talk a little bit, and maybe Matt too, but certainly Eric is going to talk about breeding decisions, what he looks for in the cows that are here now and where he would like them to go in the next generation or a couple generations down into the future. So what's he looking for, and then what is he going to do in terms of his breeding decisions to optimize what he's got for production on forage?
So the answer to those 3 questions are, I'm not sure, I don't know, and who knows. But, no.
Thank you for your honesty.
So the book is definitely open, and again, we're just getting started here. So we were able to purchase two different herds and then transition a bunch of heifers out of our conventional dairy. So I've always liked small frame cows, even on the conventional side. Never bred for big cows. Really think the Holstein breed went the wrong way. Cows got bigger, made more milk, but got less efficient. So we always, on my other dairy, I always bred for moderate framed, good uddered, good feet and legs, and I think it's paid off because we didn't hear anything about a feed efficiency until probably 3, 4, or 5 years ago on the dairy side. And now everything's coming back, and I think the beef industry actually led that. A lot of the big feedlots, a lot of the grass guys even, who's putting $1 in, what are we getting out? So we're going to follow that same philosophy here. I like the Jersey cow. The breed has come a long way in the last 15 years, 20 years. But again, we have a hodgepodge of Jersey Cross, and then Holstein. So I like even with the jerseys, like a shorter jersey, because some of the American jerseys are getting big, very big. Like a shorter muzzled cow, wide muzzle, wide chest. Something that's going to convert forage as much as we can and push the component side. So we're looking at not your traditional New Zealand genetics, or I would call traditional, but some of the bulls carried by sustainable genetics. And I would call them New Zealand-minded, grass-minded, but in a real powerful package is the way I explain those bulls and those cows. So they're gonna transmit a cow that's just gonna be real good on forage, real functional, and hopefully last a long time. So that's the name of the game if we can get longevity. What I do at our home farm, I look at all our cows that are over 8 years old. So we have a good stretch of cows that are from 8 to 13 years old over there. And I look at our 13-year-old cow, and she has never been the prettiest cow on the farm. I look at her and I say, what is she like? And she's moderate frame, but she's deep-bodied, moderate frame. She actually sits low on her pasturage, and she always has her whole life. And she's 13 years old and has had 12 calves. So that tells you her reproductive efficiency. So what we're going to do here, we're just getting into some of the AAA analyzation. So we're going to go through, and I'm going to have probably a terminal group where don't like you, you're going to be bred beef, never going to raise a calf out of you. And then on the jerseys, we're going to stay jerseys. And then as far as the Holsteins, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do, but been finding some older style Holstein genetics. And if not, we've also talked about, crossbreeding. All our heifers were bred jerseys the first time around just for calving these purposes. Well, not just for that, but that first cross will be a good cross. Help with the calving ease, no issues there. And then when we have that first gen, that F1, we can, there's a lot of different routes we can go, and we're just going to kind of pick and choose. Some we may go right back Jersey with, and other ones we may try to find a third breed to go to. Maybe Ayrshire, we'll see. But jerseys will definitely stay jerseys, and as we get some records on these cows, DHI tests and everything like that, we'll really see how the jerseys are performing compared to the other breeds, and kind of make that decision as we go.
Earlier, Karina made a comment. When you were talking about somatic cell up in the parlor, her comment or her question was, have you guys looked at somatic cell count on an individual cow basis, or is it just too soon? You really haven't been able to submit data yet on individual cows.
We just tested the milk on Monday, so we should have data tomorrow or next week.
Okay.
Then we'll start looking.
Start looking at that.
I don't know. So far, it hasn't been an issue. One thing we are impressed with so far with the dairy masters is we seem to get pretty good, pretty clean milk out. So we had these traditional tie stall cows, and I remember growing up in the tie stall, we had more gutter cleaner links hanging around the barn to hang on milker units than we actually had in our gutter cleaner. So there's some of these cows coming from, I would say, traditional type tie stalls. You hold down this quarter, hold down that quarter. Whereas, we've worked really hard on our udder prep procedure, everything at the other farm, get cows in, get them milked out fast, and get them back out to the barn. So we're trying to, move that same philosophy here. And so far, just by changing, to this new parlor and just the way the inflations are sized, it's a totally different philosophy of milking cows. It's all four at the same time with a vacuum, and it's zero vacuum on the rest phase. So your teat ends should be really, really good. So far, so good. So it's a lot different philosophy than 60-40 pulsation or whatever, side to side, front back. So that right there is already taken care of. I'm going to say 75% of that, which I didn't expect it to, because when we were milking in the tie barn with, say, just regular inflations and traditional inflations and shells, we were having to worry about quarters getting milked out and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so we'll see. With the swing parlor, it may be less of an issue because we've got a lot to do on one side. Maybe that one cow's still milking over here. She's really not holding anything up. If she's not holding up our flow, it may not be a big deal. So I'm not so sure. And then the other thing we've done, you can do too on milking speed, is you can easily teach this sounds a little bit arrogant, but you can easily teach cows to milk out faster. My experience over the hill is very tight on time. We had cows that were 13 to 15 minutes milking, and we started backing those cows down, made a slow milking group, got frustrated with a small group of cows. It actually cost us more time coming in the parlor. We got rid of that. I said, oh boy, 8 out of 10 of these cows are going to end up in the mastitis group, and none of them did. We set our takeoff settings slower every week by about 50 seconds, and those cows over time actually, their biological clock says, okay, I have to drop my milk faster, and it really works. You have to do it slowly. So we could do the same thing here. So I'm not so sure. I'm hoping it's not going to be an issue. That was a long explanation of that question, but I'm hoping it's going to be simple. We do have a few alley layers still. Again, the cows came in. Luckily, it was earlier. The weather was good. They were outside a lot. They got acclimated to the headlocks. Then a few of them started using stalls. We had 0 cows using. They didn't even know what a stall was. They didn't know that they could step up and lay in there. So over time, they've gotten more acclimated and better, and hopefully we can, kick that issue out the door, and then just getting everything systematic. Takeoffs are going to help tremendously. We probably shouldn't be milking with 16 units in there, but they're there. It's when you do have 2 people, but it is hard to keep up with sometimes on the over milking.
So when you're looking at a cow, and is there a type that you've noticed? You've already said, a little bit shorter, a little bit wider, deeper.
That's an older cow right there. That's what. Again, she's not going to win at the county fair, but she's deep chested, deep bodied, short. I like the shorter nose jerseys. Big veins, big milk veins. She's dry.
Yeah.
Right now, we're drying off. So big milk veins, a lot of udder flow, but then enough capacity. We're still. So don't take this the wrong way, but we're still in a volume-based business. So whatever your paradigm is, I don't care if you want to sell 8,000 pounds of milk or 6,500 or 20,000 per cow per year. We're still trying to push volume within that system, within that model. That's the way I see it, because we're still, you know, we're still shipping a commodity out. So just to be able to maximize the balancing of volume with the efficiency, because you can top Holstein herds can make 95 to 100 pounds of milk, but what's it cost to do that? What's it cost on the other end? So I guess it's getting down to what's the margin? What's your margin on what's going in, what's coming out? The whole farm budget. But if you can breed cows that are going to last a long time, it's going to make us money in the long run. So we want to be here. We want to be here for a long time. So that's our goal. But a cow like that, again, smaller cow that still has the deep capacity to get the job done. And on the American Jersey side, I think you have to be careful. Some have gotten the mature cow size on the Jerseys has grown also. So we have to be careful there that we're not getting too big, because I think we're starting to lose efficiency, and go back to not just the numbers, to balance the genomic end with the cow families, and the history, see what we can do. But there's good cows, good cow families in every single breed. I mean, there's some Holstein herds that could come out and graze and compete, and just because they're built the right way, just as much as there are Jerseys or everything else. So, definitely, so we've been breeding over at my other operation. We've been A2 over there on our. We've got about 80 Jerseys over there out of 1,000 or 1,200 plus. So we've been A2, pretty much a big believer in that. So we've been A2, and looking now at the homozygous polled. So the one bull we had running with heifers is homozygous polled. So really have to search for that combination of everything. But I think that's going to be a good combination if we can be homozygous and polled. Or homozygous polled and A2 would be great.
Yeah. So.